Hello and welcome. This is going to be an interesting one. I did a very short video yesterday. This one might turn out to be very long because I'm going to try what I think might be the hardest esports case ever, or at least it's certainly a good contender for it. That is a case called A Dicey Battle by Michael Jarman from last year's Excel World Championship. And I, well, I'll explain what makes it so hard in a minute, but just to add to it, this was already an extremely hard case. But Michael told me recently that he had actually prepared another two levels that were never used. One labeled very hard, like the top level of the last one, and one labeled impossible. And I found that the challenge of that kind of irresistible. Um, so I'll quickly explain A, what makes this so hard, and B, why I think that I might have a chance today. And then we'll dive on in. So the idea of the case, you're playing this game. It's based on a game called Dicey Dungeons, which I have never played. And in that game, you have various equipment. You roll dice, and you can use the dice to power the equipment. Um, so it starts off with simple things like you can put a dice into a sword and it deals damage equal to the dice roll. You can put a dice into a broadsword and it deals damage equal to the dice roll plus 2. Then later you get things that are more powerful but also more picky. So for example, the battle axe deals double the dice roll, but it can only take numbers 1 to 4. Then you get this thing with a countdown. A rifle, you have to load 8 pips into it, possibly over multiple rounds, and then it goes off and deals 12 damage. I think that rifle is called the staff in the later versions because apparently that's what it's called in the real game. Um, and then we get into kind of multi-round things where your opponent is going to attack you, and if you take any damage, then you're dead. So you have to, in addition to trying to deal damage to them, you also have to try to shock them and figure out the most damage you can do over 3 turns. It gets very, very, very complicated. So why do I think I have a chance? Well, to face a particularly terrifying opponent, it seems, in keeping with epic tradition to have a particularly awesome weapon. And I have for this a particularly awesome weapon forged by none other than the Excel wizard himself. I have a small credit in this. He did all the real work. But so Bo Ridabon, the Excel wizard, posted a whole bunch of videos last year. I mean, he's still doing them, but there were a few. Was it last year or I don't know, maybe 6 months back or something? Solving Advent of Code programming challenges in Excel, and as part of that, he developed these really clever ideas for coming up with ways to list out permutations, ways to list out combinations in Excel in efficient ways using dynamic arrays. And so at some point, coming up to either an esports battle or an FMWC round or something, I said to him, hey, I think some of these could be converted into lambdas and make very useful functions. And so I wrote a few different lambdas inspired by the things he had done. And he looked at it and forged them all together into a single incredibly powerful lambda function called percom permutation combination. So I'm not. This video is not mostly about how this function works. This is just what I'm bringing with me into it. But this is what makes me think that I might be able to tackle this challenge. So the idea is, from n things, so let's say 5, you want to pick some number of things, let's say 4. So you can just start with that. Here are all the ways that you can choose 4 things, 4 numbers from the numbers 1 to 5 in all the different possible orders. If you wanted to say, I'm actually only interested in them in order, then you can put in an optional third argument. So you just get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or if I just come back to a smaller example for a minute, say all the ways to choose 2 things from 3. So you can have 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 3, 2. There's an option to allow repetition. So then you'd also have 1, 1, and 2, 2, and 3, 3 as options. There is an option to have only in kind of non-decreasing order. So 1, 1 is still in there, but 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 2, and so on. Lots of different things you can do with this. Again, I'm not trying to make it a tutorial on this function, but it's very powerful for what we need to do in this case, which is consider lots of different scenarios. So the thing I sort of briefly alluded to this earlier, the thing that made this case really hard was that to consider all the scenarios is very daunting. And so you had to try and come up with heuristics, with like simplification rules to say, okay, well, you'll almost always want to you'll almost always want to use the broadsword because that's good, or you'll always want to use the battle axe if it's available, if you have a number 1 to 4, because that's, doubling is really powerful. But the challenge with those heuristics is they can go wrong. So like here, for example, there's a case where you only roll 1 dice. So you look at this and you say, well, one thing doubles and the other thing just adds 2. And so generally you would expect your best bet is to give the thing, give the best dice that you can to the thing that doubles. But that actually breaks down on this one because there's only 1 dice and it only has 1 pip. And in that case, if you give it to the battle axe that doubles, the 1 turns into 2. But if you give it to the broadsword that adds 2, the 1 turns into 3. And so you're actually better off to use the broadsword. So there are lots of, like I said, heuristics like this, and that's how I approached it. I think how most people approach trying to solve the case was like, rather than having this massive search space, let's try to narrow it down with different rules. But the thing that made the case so hard was that there were so many edge cases. These examples are pretty simple, but it gets into like really complicated stuff later. This one especially, I think this was the hardest level, even though it was level 4 of the original, where you had a tool that could allow you to reuse one of your other two. So you had a battle axe and a broadsword. You can only use each weapon once per turn, but then you also have this thing called a hook shot that lets you reuse one of your other weapons. And the number of different combinations of ways you could use that was kind of staggering. So, like I said, I approached it by trying to come up with heuristics. I think most of the people did as well. But armed with this cool permutation combination function, I'm now going to attempt to just brute force it, and we'll see if that works. And if it goes well, then I will attempt to tackle level 7 and level 8, or I think this only got to level 5. They must have renumbered at some point along the way, but anyway, I'll attempt to tackle the very hard levels. So let's start off with just a little bit of kind of proof of concept. So here we've got up to 4 dice. We don't always have that many. And we want to do, one other kind of thing to introduce in the lambdas I've prepared. So one thing that I thought about is if I'm doing a bunch of things like, I don't know, percom 3.1, sorry, that's a bad example. Let's say 4.2. Basically the way I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be thinking about, well, this number is the dice that I give to whatever my first weapon, say the sword. This number is the index of the dice that I give to my second weapon, in this case the broadsword. And you can think about more variations than that later on. So one thing that I'm going to want to do, like I'll generate this as one array, but I'm going to want to pull out one column of that, another column of that, many, many times. So just for brevity of writing, I've written another lambda here, which just is choose calls, but shorter. So F of array and n just becomes choose calls of array and n. So in other words, if I say let, I don't know, PC per com be that, then if I say F of PC1, sorry, I need another closing bracket, then that gives me the first column. If I say F of PC2, that gives me the second column, just for ease of writing. And the other thing I have is this pips lambda, which is just a way of converting dice into numbers. So I'll just show you. So if I say pips of that, it gives me 4131. And the way it does that is by matching the dice against a list of the 6 dice generated with Unicode characters. So it's, I think, unichar of sequence of 6 starting from 9, 8, 5, 6 generates, you can't really see it there because the font is quite small, but that generates a list of the 6 dice. So I match it against that, and because there are some cases where a dice may or may not exist, there's an if error. So if it's not one of the 6 dice, then it just gives me double quotes. Actually, I think I kind of want that to be 0 rather than double quotes. So that is the arsenal that I bring to the battle with me. Let's see how we get on. So first up, level 1, we have up to 4 dice and we have 2 pieces of equipment. So I'm going to say let pix be percom, and so from 4 things I want to pick 2 things, and those are going to be my 2 weapons. Then my dice is going to be pips of this range here, And then let's just say that sorry, let's open up the formula bar, make it a bit bigger. So my, let's see, sword is going to be f of, sorry, all right, one more thing. Just call it p dice. My picked dice is going to be index of dice by picks. So let's just kind of explain how that's working quickly. So picks, what are you complaining about? I'm missing something. Sorry, pips of that. There we go. So picks is this. So for example, here it says 1, then 2. So that should give me the first dice and then the second dice, which should become 1 and 6. So if I look at p dice, now it's saying I've got a 1 and a 6. So the 1 is going to the sword and the 6 is going to the broadsword. So then my sword is going to be f of p dice 1, and my broadsword is going to be f of p dice 2. And then my damage is going to be if my, sorry, it's just going to be my sword. Yeah, so if, sorry, it's going to be my sword, because if the sword is 0, then you're not missing anything. Plus, if broadsword is greater than 0, then broadsword plus 2. I could say otherwise 0, I don't actually need to. So, too few arguments, sorry, oh, sorry, yes, so then I need to output something. So there's my damage. And then all I need to do is take the maximum of that across all my cases, and there it is, that's the 13. And we can just pop that in here and copy it down, and hopefully they will all come out right. But again, I did say there are edge cases, so sometimes when I say hopefully we'll copy down, it probably won't work. But okay, so that's that. Now let's move on to a slightly harder one. So here we've got a battle axe, which can double, but can only take numbers 1 to 4. So same setup. The broadsword will be exactly the same. The battle axe will be a little different. So my damage is going to be if BA is less than 5, then 2 times BA. And the rest of the setup is the same. So the broadsword, again, here I don't need to worry about the 0 case because 2 times 0 is 0. Here I just needed to worry about the 0 case because if you're adding 2, then having no dice plus 2 wouldn't be the right answer. No dice means you can't use it at all. So that's why you have to wrap that in an if. Here the if is just whether you're able to arm it, which is less than 5. And then I think that's the only change. And that works. Hooray. So now level 3. Level 3 is a little more complicated, but okay. Let's, it's not that bad actually. So let's just start off over here. We're going to say let picks. Actually, sorry, let me carry over some of my workings here. And then bring this out here. So this time my picks really just need to pick 1. So, sorry, let me explain this one. So you've got a sword, which deals damage equal to the dice roll, and then you've got a rifle, which you can load. So you have to load 8 pips into it to get it to fire. So let's just quick look at the example. So here we've got, let's zoom in. So we've got a 1, a 6, a 3, and a 5. So if I take the 3 and the 5, I can load them into the rifle and get that to shoot for 12 damage. And if I put the 6 into the sword, that'll give me another 6. That's 18 damage there. Over here, I can put those 2 into the rifle and that one into the sword. So that would give me 12 from the rifle plus 2 there. So what did I say? I said 18 here. So 12 plus 2 there is 14. And then here, I could put the 6 and the 2 in the rifle to get 12 plus 4 would be 16. And then hopefully that'll match. Yeah, that adds up to 48, which is the answer. So the idea is basically you have to choose which dice is going to go into the sword. Everything else goes into the rifle. If it's not enough to shoot the rifle, then it stays in the rifle and carries over to the next turn. So the one kind of subtlety here is you don't have to use the sword. So there's a case here somewhere, I don't remember where exactly, where all the dice add up to, is it here? No, anyway, I may or may not spot it, but There's a case with a lot of low dice where all the dice add up to 8, and so your best strategy is not to use the sword at all and just load up the rifle and shoot and ignore the sword. So what that means is that we need to consider 5 different possibilities for the sword, which is, use the first dice in the sword, second dice in the sword, third dice, and so on, or don't use the sword. So let's take this over here. So our picks, which is going to be percom 5, 1. 5 is going to mean don't use it. So dice is pipped of this stuff, that's fine, stays the same. P dice stays the same. So then our sword is F of P dice. Sorry, our sword just is P dice, isn't it? But fine, F of P dice 1, just to keep it consistent with the rest. Then our rifle is going to be sum of dice minus the sword. So in other words, whatever you don't put to the sword, you can put to the rifle. Then the one other thing that we need to know is we need to think about, not on the first turn, but on the other turns, we need to think about what's carried over from the previous turn. Well, I'll come back to that in a second. Well, let's just say plus, I'll just put +0 there right now. What I need to change that into is plus what comes from the previous turn. So then, now you could spread out the workings a little more. I'm going for a slightly compact approach here, but my thought is we're going to figure out the damage we do, and if there are any leftover dice, that'll be less than 8, because if it was 8, it would fire, and then they'd be done. So if there are any leftover dice, I'm just going to divide that number by 10. So that way I can say the damage is the integer piece of what's there, and what's carried over is what comes after the decimal point. So what does that mean? It means we've got SW, so we'll say damage is sword plus, if rifle is greater than or equal to 8, then 12, otherwise rifle over 10. And let's just output damage and see what that looks like. Oh, sorry. I need to say if error of this 0. So in other words, if I try to reach for the fifth of these dice for my sword, then that just means it's a 0. So here, if I put the 4 into the sword, that will mean that I'm putting 5 pips into the rifle, which is not enough to shoot it, so I do 4 damage and I carry over 5. If I put anything else into the sword, then the rest adds up to enough to fire the rifle. Or sorry, not anything else. If I put a 1 into the sword, the rest adds up to enough to fire the rifle. If I put a 3 in, then I do 3 damage and carry 6 over, and so on. So then again, I can just take the max of damage. So then, I'm just going to put that over here, and then I'm going to come over here, and here I'm just going to say, instead of the 0, I'm going to say mod of this by 1. So the remainder you get when you divide it by 1, in other words, the part of it after the decimal place, times 10. And that's it. And then we can just say equals int of this plus, plus int of this plus int of this to be our damage. And then hopefully we can just copy down. And let's see if that works. Oh, it does. Hooray. Okay. I thought I was going to miss something there. All right, I'm going to skip over this one because it's a little harder. I'll come back to it. I'll do this level first. Wow. Okay. So for level 5, for 4 and 5, and I think one or both of the later ones as well, we got to think about shock. So the idea here is you're trying to damage an opponent, so you maximize the damage you can do in this turn. But in between your turns, they get a turn. Your health is low, so if they land 1 blow, you're dead. But in some turns, you're able to do shock, and if you shock them, they miss their next move, and you get to take another turn. So So yeah, the idea is if you can, you aim to shock your opponent in turn 1 and turn 2. It doesn't matter on turn 3, this is mislabeled, but it doesn't matter on turn 3 because whether you shock them or not, that's your last turn. So you just have to maximize the damage you can do over 3 turns. So we're going to have 4 things available. One is a hammer. Just like the sword, it does damage equal to your dice roll, but if you roll a 6, then it gives a shock. The buzzer only inflicts shock, but no damage, and it can only take even numbers. So you can see right away, if you don't have a 2 or a 4 or a 6, you can't deal shock at all, because those are the only 2 things that give shock. Then the battle axe does damage equal to twice the dice roll. We've had that before. And then the dice cannon does 1 damage, and you can use it as many times in a turn as you want. So in other words, whatever dice you have left over that you don't put into the hammer or the buzzer or the battle axe, just throw them all in the dice cannon and they do 1 damage each. So this one is tricky. You could think about it as, okay, pick one thing for the hammer, one thing for the battle axe, one thing for the buzzer. You get a whole lot of edge because you have to consider the possibility that any one of those or more than one of them it might be best not to use it, either because it's best not to use best not to use the battle axe if you only have numbers that are over 4, because then it won't do anything. It's best not to use the buzzer if you can use the hammer to give shock, that kind of thing. So a bit of a reversal. Before I looked at it as, okay, let's use the picks to say, which one of these am I using. This time I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to say not which number am I using for the thing, but which thing am I using for each dice. So what does that look like? I'm going to say per com, I'm going to choose for 4 things, I want to choose 5 cases. I think I'm using this right. And I want to allow repetition. And that should give me, no, I did that wrong. Sorry. So n is 5, 5, I think is what I want. So that gives me, yes, there is. So 3, 1, 2, 5 rows. I'll just show you here rows of that. 3, 1, 2, 5, which is 5 to the power of 5. So what does that mean? It means for any, actually, sorry, for this one, you should never not use something. So I was thinking you'd have to allow for an unused possibility, but actually it's always better to put something in the dice cannon than not use it. So we really only need 4. So now we've got 1024. No, sorry, yes. So yes, now we've got 4 to the power of 5, which is 1024 different possibilities. And so the idea is we're going to basically take, I'm just going to get rid of the semicolon there. We are going to, so let picks be this, then weapons be this, picked weapons be index weapons by picks, and let's just return pwep and see what that looks like. So here we're saying one possibility is put everything in the hammer. Now we know that doesn't make sense because the hammer can only be used once. So one of the first things that I'm going to do here, oh, and sorry, I just realized I'm picking 5 things, but I only need to pick 4 things because it's only 4 dice in a turn. So one of the first things I'm going to do is check, is there more than one hammer? If there is, just drop it completely. And I'll do various other checks as well. But this is the setup. So there's now only 256 distinct possibilities for what you can do with each of the 4 dice, because each of the 4 dice has to be used for one of these things. So now we can start to work. So one more setup thing, which is, again, I need dice, which is going to be pips of this. Okay, so now the idea is I'm going to apply a big by row to this, and for each row, I'm going to calculate the best that you can do with that setup. So for example, anything with multiple hammers or anything with multiple battle axes or anything with multiple buzzers is going to score a 0 because that's not a valid configuration. But among the valid configurations, we're going to score it. Now, before we talked about, you know, you could do damage, or if you failed to do damage, the second best thing was to kind of pre-fill the dice, pre-fill the rifle. Here, the first preference is to do shock. The second preference is to do as much damage as possible. Actually, sorry, I'm thinking ahead of myself. There's one, the level 8, the impossible one, is where you also have the dice cannon in this multi-weapon scenario. That's where it gets really complicated. Right now, we're only solving for 2 variables, shock and damage. So the way I'm going to do that is basically think of it as shock is going to be, plus 1,000 if you do shock. And that way we'll say, whatever, I don't know, let's say you do 15 damage here, then we'll say 1,015. And then, we'll know that if this is over 1,000, then we can take the bit of it that's above 1,000 and also look at the next turn. If it's below 1,000, then you're done. So you just take that score and you can't take the next turn. So this is going to be a very complicated by-row. I'm going to risk trying to write it all in one go. So let BR be by-row of, what did I call it, of P weapons. Lambda ru is what? And obviously this lambda is going to have to be a let because it's going to be big. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to say wep match. So what I want to do is compare the row of weapons that I have here against the list of weapons here. And that's just going to be minus minus row equals weapons. And that'll give me a kind of 4x4 grid for where I'm matching. That's just going to make some of the math later easier. So then first thing is the hammer. I'm going to look at the hammer matches, and that's going to be index of weapon match. I want row 1 and all the columns. So in other words, that's going to be just a vector that is 1 for each time it's a hammer. So here it's going to be 1 1 1 1, here it's going to be 1 1 1 0, and so on. So that's hammer match, and then I'm interested in the damage done by the hammer, and that is if sum of ham match is greater than 1, then 0. Otherwise, it is what? Oh, it's the dice that corresponds to where there's the hammer. So I can say sum of ham match times dice. And so this will either give me 0 if there are multiple hammers or no hammers, but if there's exactly one hammer, it will give me the value of the dice that goes into the hammer. Okay, so that's the setup there. Then the buzzer, we're going to say if here I just want to know whether the buzzer goes or not. So we're going to say sum of index. So again, we're going to go index in that weapon match. This time, again, we're assuming that the buzzer is the second row. So we're going to take index weapon match 2 0. That's going to give me a vector of 0 0 0 0 for if there's no buzzer, 0 0 0 1 in this case where there's one buzzer, and so on. So it's going to be that times is even dice. I think I called it dice. Yes, dice. Yeah, that'll work. So, sorry, one other thing, which is you should never use the buzzer if the hammer has a 6. So if the hammer has a 6, it's automatically applying shock, so you should never be interested in the buzzer. So here we're just, actually, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. So here we're just going to say that is greater than 0. So is there any dice which is even and is fed into a buzzer? If so, then we get buzz. Okay, so that's the buzzer. The next thing is the battle axe. So again, I'll do BA match first. That'll be index weapon match 3 0. and then, man, it's getting big. I think it's going to work. I spent a few minutes on preamble, so I'm theoretically still within the half hour, although I'm not mostly focusing on getting this done within time. I'm just focusing on, is it possible to do something as crazy as this? So anyway, BA is going to be if sum of BA match, oops, something's, so that's not auto-completing. That is a sign that I'm missing a bracket somewhere, probably. So the best way to check that is to go up to my let and go, okay, this is the first name, yes, the first calculation, yes, second name, yes, second calculation, yes, third name, yes. Oh, that is not all the third calculation, so I'm missing a closing bracket here. And that is indeed the case. Okay, so then if sum BA match is greater than 1, then 0. Otherwise, we want to say sum of BA match times dice times dice is less than or equal to 4. So again, if there's multiple axes, 0. If there's no axe, 0. If there is one single axe, and if that axe is less than or equal to 4, then this gives you the dice that goes into that, and then you multiply that by 2. Okay, and then finally the dice cannon is just, DC is just going to be sum of index weapon match row 4, 0. So in other words, again, that's the vector that is just 1 for each dice that is applied to the dice cannon, and in the case of the dice cannon, it just, the damage is 1 for every 1 that there is, so that's all you have to do. So then the next thing we have to calculate is shock, and shock is going to be if ham equals 6, then 1, otherwise buzz. That's it. So then the damage. So the damage that we do is hammer, because again, if the hammer is not valid, it'll give you 0, but if it's valid, it's just whatever goes into it. The buzzer does no damage. Battle axe plus dice cannon. And then finally, what we're interested in is max of 1000 times shock plus damage. Boom. So that's what I want my biro to return. Lots of closing brackets. Too many arguments for what? Oh, so I probably missed more closing brackets here. Yes, I think I might be missing closing bracket here. Just again. Okay. Now what? Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I was in this outer let. I've said let pix be this and blah 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 be this and br be biro, all this stuff. So then I need to return br. And actually, sorry, I realized I'm applying the max here as I was earlier when shock and damage and other things were full columns, but they're not full columns here, they're just single values. So just return this. And so this tells me, if I give all of them to the hammer, 0, obviously. If I give, well, anyway, you get the idea. So there's various different possibilities here, and I'm just interested in the max of that. So that tells me I can do 1014. And so that's pretty cool. Again, if I were up against time, I would just now get on with it, go do the next thing. But just in the interest of sort of auditability, we can do another thing, which is we've got our weapon choice, pwep, and we've got the biro gives you the max damage you can do for each of those. So what we could do, instead of just outputting the maximum of that, we could output hstack. So we can give the 4 weapon choices and the max. So we're going to hstack xlookup something that will be greater than all the values. So let's just say 10,000 in br returning from pwep. And vstack that next to the max of br. And sorry. You gotta say exact match or next smaller item, because I've picked something that is bigger than all of them. Or you could just put max br in there, and then it would be an exact match. So this is telling you the best you can do is shock plus 14 damage, and the way to achieve that is to put the 6 into the hammer, which makes sense, then to put the 3 into the battle axe, which again makes sense. It's the biggest thing that is less than or equal to 5. And then to give the other 2 to the dice cannon because there's nothing else you can do with them. So the hammer does 6, the battle axe does 2 times 3, which is another 6, makes 12, and the 2 going into the dice cannon do 1 each to bring it up to 14. So that's kind of cool. So then that is what you do for turn 1. You do the same thing for turn 2, and because of the way I've sized it, that'll just already kind of point to the right place. And then for turn 3, you got to modify it a little bit because now we're no longer interested in shock. We are only interested in damage. So here we're just going to optimize for damage. So rather than returning 1,000 times shock plus damage, we're just going to return that. Okay, so if I've got this right, the formula that will pull it all together is going to be much simpler than the formula that does each individual piece, and that's just going to be so mod this 1,000. So in other words, just strip off the 1,000 plus if this is greater than 1,000, then I can move on to the next turn. So then if I get to the next turn, I'll say mod this 1,000 plus if this is greater than 1,000, then I can go on to the last turn and take that. Otherwise, I can't. So 0. Sorry, where am I? So that's that if. Otherwise, 0 and that if. That's it, I think. And that gives me 43. Woo, amazing. Okay, so then we'll copy this down. Copy it all the way down. Oh, have I allowed for the fact that there are possibly missing dice? I don't remember. Let's have a quick look. So let's see. Yeah, multiplying by dice, so dice will be 0. Multiplying by dice, so dice will be 0. So yes, I think that's fine. Pretty sure that's fine. So, well, let's copy it down and find out. Oh, amazing. Oh, no, it didn't work. All right. So I'm not working correctly on the ones lower down. Oh, I know why. It's because the dice cannon is not checking. So if I assign a dice cannon to this one, it's not checking for anything. So, okay. Slight change, pretty simple. I just need to change the dice cannon to be sum of that times dice greater than 0. And then I think that will fix it. So here again, this times dice greater than 0. Still wrong, but hopefully when I fix it on the last one, we'll be good. Let's see. This times dice greater than 0. All right, let's see. Did that fix it? No, it didn't. All right, so let's take a closer look. Ah, yeah, okay. Because it's assigning the buzzer to all of these because 0 is an even number. Okay, fine. Yep, that's also silly, so I need to check on the buzzer as well. So times is even dice times dice is greater than 0. And then we're still assigning the buzzer to a lot of these, but it's not doing anything, so that's probably fine. Okay, so sorry, that. So where did I put that? So times dice greater than 0. So you can see that, like, one of the things that made this case very, very hard and complicated was that there were so many kind of oddities like this, and one of them was that you had to allow for the dice sometimes not being there. So okay, I got that one a little bit wrong. Like competition, that would have gone badly, but I'm pretty happy with how I did it. Okay. All right, let's do the hook shot, and oh god, this video is already almost 40 minutes long, so we're probably going to be at like an hour by the time I get done with this, but what the heck, sometimes, you know, yesterday was a 10-minute video, today is going to be an hour video. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, etc. All right, so let's do this. Sorry, let's do this. Okay, so a lot of the setup will be the same. So picks. Now, how are we doing the picks? Oh yeah. So in this case, I think the best way to think of it is like 3 separate possibilities. So there's the possibility that you do not use the hook shot. There's the possibility that you use the hook shot to allow you to reuse the battle axe, and there's the possibility that you use the hook shot to allow you to reuse the broadsword. So my picks is going to be all the permutations of 4, and let's kill all the rest and just output picks. Just quickly check, that should be 24. Yes, that's 24 different combinations. Good. So, okay. So I basically want to compose 3 different possibilities. So one is the sword and axe, and in that case, I don't have to worry about any blank dice here. So here I'm going to say f of, oh, sorry, hang on, this is the p-wep one. I want p dice. Let's get rid of weapons. Put dice back up here. And then have p dice. We pick from the dice by the picks. Okay, so the sword is going to be f of p dice 1. And that, let's see, the sword, so that plus 2. Then I'm going to say plus if f of p dice 2. Let's grab that. If that is less than or equal to 4, then 2 times that, otherwise 0. So that's what you can do with the sword and the axe. So let's just output sword and axe. So we can do various different things, but the highest one of them is 14. That's one possibility. Then we've got 2 other possibilities. The first one is what I'll call hookshot, sword, axe, axe. And the last one is hookshot, axe, sword, sword. So hookshot, sword, axe, axe is going to be if it's a valid hookshot, so if f of p dice 1, what do I need for the hookshot? Can only take even numbers. And I don't need to allow for missing dice here, they're always populated. So if is even f of p dice 1, then this whole thing becomes possible, otherwise it's not possible. So then it's going to be f of p dice 2 plus 2 for the sword. Then it's going to be plus if f of p dice 3 is less than or equal to 4, then f of p dice 3 times 2, otherwise 0. So that's the first axe, and then the same thing for the second axe, but with the 4th dice. That's the end of that. And let's just output HSAA for a second. Missing an opening or right. Let me see. Where am I missing brackets? That is. So let's see. If is even. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm missing a closing bracket there, I guess. So then here we're saying here it just doesn't work, and here you can do 9, 9, 7, 7, 15, 15, and then a bunch of other cases where it doesn't work. So that's cool. So then I want to do the same thing for HASS, which is hookshot, axe, sword, sword. So similar setup. We're going to say if the first one is even, then you can do all this stuff, otherwise you can't. So then now I'm just kind of tempted. I'm repeating this axe stuff so much to turn it into a lambda, but there's a lot of lambdas going on here already, so don't want to go too crazy. So so we're saying if the first one is less than or equal to 4, then double it, otherwise don't. Plus f of p dice 3 plus 2 plus f of p dice 4 plus 2. So then finally, what I'm interested in is going to be the max of using the sword and the axe, using the hookshot, the sword, the axe twice, or using the hookshot, the axe, and the sword twice. And that gives me 16, and I was worried for a second because that's not 46, but of course that's just one turn. So let's put this over here. That is, yeah, that's pointing to those. Then I can put that there and there. And that adds up to 46. Sweet. Okay, so maybe this is going to work. If this works first time, I'm going to feel very proud, but also like you're going to be looking at this thinking, this guy said this question was really hard and had lots of edge cases, and it's not that hard. It's just working first time. I'm like, trust me, it's really hard. Okay, ooh, that's bad. Oh, sorry. That's because I just copied the number. Okay. So the dice don't have any number values, so I can just do sum. Okay, moment of truth. Yeah, amazing. Okay. So let's go on and look at the stuff that has never been seen before, except by the people Michael has shared it with. So level 7. New type of equipment. Okay, sorry. So this says new type of equipment, but this staff is the same as the rifle we had before. So now instead of having it with just a sword, we have it with a sword and a battle axe. Don't have to deliver shock. What's the maximum combined damage you can do in 3 turns? So, so yeah, this one you could kind of see doing either of the 2 ways. I think I'm going to do it in the spirit that I did level 5. So I'm going to copy this. I put that, let's see, 2 after. So I'll put it here. Oh, and incidentally, these are not dice anymore. I guess that's a formatting thing they changed later. So I'm just going to make dice be dice, not pips of, dice be that range, sorry, not pips of that range. Then I'm interested in my picks should be 4 things, choosing 3 things, I think. My weapons should be this range here. P weapon will be the same. I'll come back to my biro in a minute. And so my output, let me just look at the picks and see if I've done that right. Percom 431. Sorry, I don't want repetition. Percom 431. No, what? Okay, that's not good. All right, what if we just delete all this? Will you behave better then? All right, that. No, you're still not happy. Why not? Oops. All right. Oh, because it's spilling. Okay, fine. Dumb. All right. So go back to where we were. Let's just move a little further over. Okay. So I got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 4, 1, 4, 2, da 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 da. This is not what I wanted because I wanted with. Wait, which way around am I doing this? I'm picking. Yeah, so I'm picking which one of the 4 dice. No, I'm so confused. Yes, I think I'm picking which one of the 4 dice will be the staff. Sorry, which one will be the sword, which one will be the axe, and everything else will be the staff. The staff is the same as the rifle before the countdown item. So, I think I'm actually contradicting what I said a minute ago, but never mind. So in that case, I only want to pick 2. I want 1 index for the axe, 1 for the sword, but I have to allow for the possibility that they won't be used. So instead of picking from 4, I'm going to pick from 6. And so that allows, so if I get, for example, 5, 6 at the end, that allows for the possibility that neither of them is being used. Okay, so then, sorry, I don't need this weapons, and I do need the P dice back. So let's put the dice back above here. And we'll do P dice, index dice picks. Let's just output P dice. Yeah, so the refs are going to be the errors. That's totally fine. I guess, let me just make this if error 0. Make it a little easier to work with. And again, there are no blanks in this level. So this is saying, one possibility is give a 1 dice to the first weapon and a 6 dice to the second weapon, 1 dice to the first weapon, 3 dice to the second weapon, and so on, or 0 meaning don't use it. Okay, so now the biro is going to be a lot simpler. Sorry, it doesn't even need to be a biro in this case because we've just got vectors. So sword is going to be f of p dice 1, and my battle axe is going to be f of p dice 2. I think this one should actually be relatively simple with the setup I have. So then my damage is going to be sword plus if BA is less than or equal to 4, 2 times BA plus, oh sorry, that's the other thing, I want to define my rifle. So rifle is going to be sum of dice minus SW minus BA. So then the damage that I do is going to be sword plus if the battle axe is less than or equal to 4, 2 times the battle axe, plus if rifle is greater than or equal to 8, then 12, otherwise, and we'll do the same thing as before, rifle over 10. So we have that available as an option, and then I just want to output that damage. And so those are all my different possibilities. And then I just need to factor in the previous, so I'm just going to put them in here, here, and here. So each one is going to point back to the previous one. This one will point back to here. So my rifle is going to be the sum of the dice that are available for the rifle plus whatever is left over from the previous turn, so mod of this by 1 times 10. And then I just need to take the maximum of damage. I'll put that there, and then put that there, and put that there. Now you'll notice that even the example is blank here. That's because when Michael sent me this question and sent it to a few fellow Excel nerds, he said part of the reason that they never ran with it, aside from the fact that I already thought this question was monstrously hard for 30 minutes, and I stand by that, was because he realized that if he included these questions, then he would have to figure out the answers to them, and he didn't want to do that and didn't do it. So good for you, Michael. But Bo, the same Excel wizard who crafted this beautiful per-com formula that I've been using throughout here, did solve this level, and I'm recognizing a total 593, which I think means that I've matched his answers, so that is good. So level 8, marked as impossible, which is just a beautiful challenge. So here we've got all the different items, and all the different complexities rolled into one. So we've got the staff, also known as the rifle in the earlier version. Countdown item starts at 8. Oh, now it deals 10 damage. I thought it dealt 12. But okay, fine. This time it deals 10. We'll live with that. We've got the hammer, which deals damage equal to your dice roll and can apply shock if you're using a 6. We've got the buzzer, which can apply shock, but only if it takes even numbers. Just double check, yes, there's no gaps here, so you could make this even harder by having fewer dice in some cases, but we don't have to deal with that. We've got the battle axe, which can only take numbers 1 to 4 and doubles it, and we've got the dice cannon, which does everything else. So again, I'm going to solve this in the same vein as this one. I want to be able to get not just the best damage I can do, but also the sort of audit trail of what weapons am I using. So I'll just drop this here and line things up. So that. Then don't worry, that will not stay broken forever. I'm just noticing this says 4, which say 5. So I'm just going to get rid of the semicolons here because that would bug me. Okay, so then my weapons is going to be this range here. My pick of weapons is going to be exactly as it was before, but now I've got 5 different possibilities, and I've got 5 for each. So instead of this being percom 4-4, it should be percom 5-5. My dice is going to be not the pips of that range, but just that range itself. And then we got to do the big beast of a biro. So some of it's going to be the same. Biro of pwep, yes. Lambda row, yes. Weapons match, row is equal to weapons, yes. And again, that's row going across, weapons going down, so we get a 2-dimensional matrix. So then Oh, and sorry, I need one more variable here, which is prev rifle / prev staff, whatever way you want to think about it, is going to be mod of this by 1 times 10. Okay. So then, let's see, I can, yeah, let's keep the workings I have. So the hammer match, the hammer is now the second row. That's the hammer match. If there's more than 1 than 0, otherwise sum of hammer match times dice gives me the dice going into the hammer. That's good. The buzzer is now row 3 times is even dice. That's good. Then the battle axe is now row 4, but otherwise that logic also carries over. Yep, that's all good. Dice cannon is now row 5, and so the only thing I need to allow for now is the staff. And the staff is relatively simple, or the staff, I called it the rifle before, so I'm going to keep calling it the rifle. So that is going to be sum of index, weapon match, so that's the first row, 0 times dice. That's it, plus prev riff. Okay, and then shock, same as before. If the hammer is 6, then that, otherwise buzz. Then the damage is going to be the hammer plus the battle axe plus the dice cannon plus if riff is greater than or equal to 8, then 10, otherwise riff over 10. And then we return 1,000 times shock plus damage. And yeah, I think all the rest of it works. Nope, it doesn't. What's wrong? Error in value. Could you be any more vague? Thanks a lot. All right, so just value. All right, so let's try outputting some other things. So first we'll just name this as output, and then we will try outputting. First, let's output pix. Does pix work? Pix works. Happy days. Second, let's output pwep. Does pwep work? Looks good to me. Then assume prevriff is not throwing an error, but just in case. Prevriff is 0. Good. So then let's output simpler outputs from the biro. So let's first output ham. And go back to outputting out. Okay. So that just matches the first row that has, or not the first row, but some row that has a hammer. Seems reasonable. Let's actually, let's just output output the whole thing. So we'll output hstack pwep next to the biro. Sorry. So here I'm outputting hammer. So yes, here there is just one hammer. Sorry, yeah. So here the hammer is in the 5th position, so it's getting the dice 1. Here the hammer is in the 4th position, so it's getting the dice 4. Then if I scroll, oops. Anyway, seems like hammer is not the issue, so let's move on. I'm looking for something that's actually throwing a value error, so let's try buzz. Buzz is throwing a value error. Okay, what's wrong with buzz? Ah, I know what it is. I know what it is. It's is even, referencing directly to a range. It doesn't like that for whatever the heck random reason. Okay, so then I think we might have just fixed everything. So let's do sh times 1000 plus dam, and then let's go back to, get this out of the way, let's go back to outputting hstack xlookup 10,000 in br, returning from pwep exact match or next smaller item next to max of br. That looks altogether more promising. And sorry, I just realized I need to point this not to here, but to here. Because that way, when I copy it over here, this one will be pointing to this cell here. So that's good. Let's just widen out a little so we can look. So first things first, does this look basically plausible? So here it's saying the best we can do is 25, and we can do that by, so that makes sense. You give the 6 to the hammer, so that takes care of your shock requirement. You give the 4 to the battle axe, so that maxes out the damage that the battle axe can do. You give the 6 and the 2 to the staff, or the rifle, which fully loads it and it shoots. So you get the max you can possibly get out of the hammer, you get the max you can possibly get out of the battle axe, you get the max you can possibly get out of the rifle, and you get 1 left over to go to the dice cannon. So that makes sense. So here then, you'd give the 6 to the hammer, you'd give the 3 to the battle axe. Oh, no, you probably wouldn't. You'd give the 5 and the 3 to the rifle, and then 1 to the battle axe, I guess. Yes, you give the 5 and the 3 to the staff, 6 to the hammer. That gets you 19 damage plus shock. Oh, and sorry, then on the last turn, we're no longer interested in shock. We're only interested in damage. Okay, so then my answer to all this madness would be, same as before, we're going to say mod of this by 1000 plus if this is greater than 1000, then mod of, so if it's greater than 1000, we go on to the next turn. So you take mod of that by 1000. So in other words, we take the 19 damage from here, plus if this is greater than 1000, then we take the last number. And actually, sorry, all of these should be int, because there is the possibility of numbers after the decimal place reflecting something being carried over to use for the rifle on the next turn, rifle slash staff. Otherwise, int of that, close, 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 67. And that's it. I'm going to pause the video for a second and just go check those against Bo's answers and see if we agree. Okay, I went and looked. I couldn't completely figure it out. I think we mostly agreed. There's a couple where we slightly disagree. I'm sure we can work that out later. But anyway, this has already been a long video. I'm not going to make it go on any longer. The interesting thing for me was that the sort of impossible level was not actually, with this technique, was not massively harder than the level 5. And similarly, the kind of very hard level here was not massively harder than the level 4. They're much harder as the complexity grows to come up with good heuristics to say, well, usually I'd want to do this, but sometimes I'd want to do that. But when your method is brute force, enumerate all the possibilities and kind of bash through them all, and you can do that quite efficiently with this very cool per com kind of formula at the heart of it, then it's not actually that much harder that way. So, whew, the unstoppable force of Dicey battle meets the immovable object of Bo's amazing permutation computation kind of permutation combination function. I really enjoyed that. I suspect it's probably a little much for most of you, and that's fine. I'll go back to doing something a little more normal soon. But for the few of you who watched all the way through this and actually found it as exciting as I did, good. You're my people. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.